Hi everyone, and welcome to this video where we look at a member of my classic computer collection, and this time we're going to have a look at the Commodore SX-64. Now the Commodore SX-64 is a luggable version of that venerable 8-bit machine, the Commodore 64. Now in this video I'm going to assume that you, the viewer, know about the Commodore 64. So what I'm going to concentrate on is really pointing out the differences between that machine and the Commodore SX-64. Now this machine was first announced in January 1983, and that's 30 years ago to the month from when this video is being made. So it's a bit of an anniversary for the SX-64. And it was dreamed up by Commodore executives largely because they'd seen the success of some of the other luggable/portables that were on the market, like the Osborne One and the K-Pros. There were others as well. And businesses seemed to like these computers. They could cart them around. They were proving to be quite popular. Now, the Commodore 64 had been released 5 months earlier, and it was a roaring success. It had a great chipset, good for graphics and sound. It was priced right. It was marketed well. So the thinking was that, this is a popular machine. So if we could just put it in a package that's going to be attractive to businesses, it's sure to sell like wildfire. Now the truth was, it didn't. And in fact, it was somewhat of a commercial flop. And when you look at it in hindsight, there are several reasons for that. One of the reasons was that it had a very small amount of screen real estate. Not only was the screen physically quite small, at 5 inches, but also it was only 40 columns across. And when you tried to do serious spreadsheet work and database, word processing tasks, it's not a lot of screen real estate to play with. So that was one problem. Another problem was that by 1983, computing had already split into two quite distinct markets. You had microcomputing anyway. You had business microcomputing, and that was largely populated by CPM machines, but also increasingly IBM PCs and PC compatibles. Then you had the home market, which was populated by a number of different machines, and the Commodore 64 was well recognized in the home market. And trying to put a well-recognized home market machine, into that business environment was difficult because the market recognized it as a home computer, so could it be taken seriously in the business market? So, that perception, I think, was a problem. Now, another reason was it didn't do so well is that it was handicapped by the very slow disk drive that came across from the Commodore 64. That disk drive that was used for that machine was incredibly slow, and the same interface was used on the SX-64, so they didn't win any friends in business. And I think the last point is that business computer was really longing for some sort of standard at that stage. It had been CPM to a point, but now you were starting to see a lot of IBM PCs and IBM PC compatible machines coming into that market. And this is what people wanted. They wanted to be able to swap disks around. If they train on a computer, they wanted that training to be an investment. So when they moved, around the office or to other offices, other businesses, the skills they learned, they could take with them. And really, the Commodore SX-64, having the Commodore 64 operating system, was completely different from really what the market was looking for. So a number of reasons, but they all added up to the fact that the SX-64, didn't sell well at all. However, it was the very first color portable computer. So it deserves a place in a classic computer collection. And not only that, it's a very cool looking computer. I mean, look at it. It's a lovely design. It's great to look at, got good colors. So it's something that certainly I'm very pleased to own. So let's have a closer look at it. Commodore marketed the SX-64 in a series of advertisements, which these days are very amusing to watch for all the wrong reasons. So here we have our casually dressed executive enjoying a juice at the pool. We've got female wallpaper, and we've got him using an SX-64 to work on those sales figures. Actually, the ad is worth watching, so if you haven't seen it, just search for it after this video. You can find it on YouTube using the words Commodore SX-64 advertisement. It's 80s cheese all the way, including the ditty used. Here in New Zealand, the machine was noted in our national computer magazine, New Zealand Bits and Bytes, in February 1984, and by March 1984, advertisements were appearing. Now, the price here is in New Zealand dollars, which was around 50 to 55 US cents at the time. Seem to be a few of these machines around in New Zealand, at least I think. They seem to appear on our auction site, Trade Me, at least once a year. Although it could be the same one doing the rounds, of course, but you do see them advertised occasionally. So here's my SX-64, standing tall and proud and closed up. Weighs about 10.5 kilograms, so it's not light, and I certainly wouldn't have liked to have had to haul this thing around airports. The handle has a good grip, but it's a plastic handle, and with the weight of the computer, it can be a bit uncomfortable a while and cut into your hand. Here's the front, which of course is the bottom of the keyboard, and you can see on here the SX-64's alternative name, and that is the Executive. And here it is opened up, and you can see it's quite an attractive design. This one's got a joystick plugged in the back, and we're going to be using that a little later on. So we'll go around the unit having a good close look at the hardware, starting with the keyboard. Here's a close-up. Now, the SX-64 keyboard's got the same keys as the Commodore 64, including those 4 function keys down the right-hand side. But note the yellow space bar. Now, I don't know what it is about the plastics they used in these keyboards, but many of the photos I've seen of other SX-64s, say on eBay or even our own Trade Me, have the same yellowing, and it's just the space bar. The other keys don't seem to be affected. So whether there was a different plastic used with just the space bar, I don't know. It's a mysterious phenomenon. Keyboard feels quite light and flimsy when you go to use it. I've noticed on my machine, and I'm not sure if it's universal with all the SX-64s, but there is a bit of key bounce with the keyboard where keys can repeat themselves sometimes if you don't just strike them at the right tempo, if you like. But otherwise, not too bad. This shows the connection of the keyboard to the computer with its cable. Just plugs in the back there. And this shows the other end where it's plugging into the computer. And it sort of slots away in a recess under there. Quite a crafty idea because when it's plugged in like that, it doesn't break up the lines of the computer. So just adds to the sort of sleek and stylish appearance of the SX-64. So that's just a shot of the front panel, and you can see there next to the screen, first of all, a cubby hole up the top where you can put spare discs, or you can use that to just tuck the keyboard connector neatly away. And below that is a disk drive, and it uses the same interface as the standard Commodore 64 disk drive, so it's fairly slow. Just note the blue trim around the front of the case there. I think that looks really cool. It's a good use of colour, and it offsets itself well against the charcoal grey of the rest of the case. So makes it look quite racy and stylish. Now we come to one of the problems which made the computer a non-starter for business, and this is the tiny 5-inch screen. It wasn't the only problem, as I mentioned earlier, but it certainly was a significant one. Now this screen was the same size as the Osborne 1, but the Osborne 1 had the advantage of having crystal clear green characters on a black screen, whereas the SX-64 composite colour image was just not clear or sharp enough on such a tiny screen for anything serious, notwithstanding the lack of screen real estate I mentioned earlier. People were well over these tiny screens, and I mean even the Osborne was struggling at this time and really getting out-competed in the marketplace by the likes of the K-Pros and machines with much larger screens, so it was a real deficiency. Here's a nice feature. This nifty little control panel underneath the Commodore logo. You flip this open and what you see there is a volume control, a number of knobs to adjust screen properties like brightness, contrast, color, etc. The computer sits neatly in its carry handle, which you can lock into place to support the machine. Again, note this stylish use of the blue and grey colours there. Looks nice. Coming around the back, things do start to look a little more industrial. So just have a look at these ports starting from the left going through to the right. So we've got a couple of joystick ports there. We've got a socket for an external composite colour monitor, so you can plug it into an external screen. Serial input output there for the likes of printers or another disk drive. In the middle there is the user port, so that's a card edge. You find that on the Commodore 64 as well, plugging in the likes of modems. There's the power socket, a fuse and an on-off switch at the very end. And here you can see the details of my particular machine. Note the date there, 1983. Now the final external feature I want to show you is the cartridge slot. This is nicely recessed so it doesn't break the lines of the case, and you can just plug your standard Commodore 64 cartridges in there, such as International Soccer. Now with the top off, you can see just what a complicated arrangement this is inside and just how tightly things are packed in there. So you've got a few vertical cards that are positioned there and linked together with a number of wires and cables. And they sort of form, if you like, a corner which encloses the disk drive and the screen assembly. And right on the back, down the bottom left, you've got the PSU componentry. It's quite a neat and compact design. This is my own photo as I had to take the machine apart to repair it. When I first took ownership of the SX-64, it had a faulty RAM, so I had to dive into the innards to fix that. Setting up the SX-64 is remarkably easy, particularly if you compare it with setting up a conventional Commodore 64. Now with the latter, you've got the likes of the power brick that you've got to connect up. You've got the monitor, various cables and bits and pieces. With the SX-64, really the only thing that's slightly tricky is getting the keyboard cable plugged in, but even that's easy enough. It just simply slots in the bottom there fairly easily. It's quite straightforward to do, and plug it into the keyboard. And once you've got that done, you've got a machine that's almost ready to go. It's just a matter of fishing out a power cord, plugging the power cord in, and there you are, the SX-64 all ready for work. So what we're going to do now is to see the SX-64 in action. So I'll switch it on, we'll let it warm up for a moment, and then I'll load a game. And of course this game is one that's for the conventional Commodore 64, but it'll be interesting to just watch it working on this machine. So here's the splash screen. As you can see, very similar to the Commodore 64, with a little bit of different wording at the top there. Colours are a little different in that we've got a blue background and a white screen, and of course this is to help with clarity, the screen being so small. So what we'll do is put our games disc in, and we'll have a look what's on it and load one of the programs. So off we go. As this is the same as the Commodore 64, it uses the same commands, so a pretty simple operating system. So this command here will allow us to have a look at a listing of the disk, what's on it. So if we just type list, we'll see a directory, and you can see that this is Commando. Some of you might be familiar with this game. It's one of my favorite games on the Commodore 64. So we'll just type out the name and get the program loading. Those of you that aren't familiar with the Commodore 64 or its syntax, that comma 8 at the end just specifies that it's the disk drive we're going to use to look for our program. Now loading programs in on the Commodore 64 is dreadfully slow, and it's the same with the SX-64. But I've cheated here, and with video editing I've chopped that long way out. So now we're onto the game, and of course it is Commando. I love the music in this game. It's just so frantic.
it gives a real sense of excitement when you're playing it. There's a purpose and an urgency. Now I'm playing this with a joystick that doesn't have an automatic fire, so this is manual button presses, which makes it even more frantic and exciting. So there's a lot going on. I found this game really the best thing to do is to almost just spray ahead of you as much as you can. Of course, occasionally you get killed, but you get bombs thrown at you. You get all sorts of things happening. It's a bit of a psycho game, I mean, because why would a single person with no backup and no men behind him try to storm the barricades with all these people coming at you? It's really pretty suicidal, but I suppose that's what a lot of these games were like. You just went for it, and this is certainly one of them that does that. Now, as I said, I love the music in this, and that was one of the things about the Commodore 64, and it's the same in the SX, of course. It's got exactly the same chips, same sound chips, same graphic chips, so you get that wonderful 8-bit music that some of these game authors produced, and it is just really pushing the boundaries, and it was in some ways in these games it was real artistry to produce this really good quality 8-bit music. So there we are. I didn't do too well, so I'll put my name in, see where I am on the scoreboard, and I'm right at the top. Oh, well, that's not too bad after all. Now, I like to have manuals with every computer in my collection, and the SX-64 is no exception. So I've got the user manual for this. It's a nice manual, well presented, well laid out, shows you how to set the unit up, good illustrations, fairly clear explanations as to what you need to do. Some quite long appendices at the rear which give you a lot of technical information about the machine, about the basic, ASCII characters, memory map, etc. And then these various chapters that introduced concepts about the SX-64 are very similar really to the menu you got with the Commodore 64. It really goes through many of those same concepts as to how to use some of the features of it. So not really too much to do with business in there. Whoops, here's an advertisement that got in there by accident. Not really tailored too much to business, more or less a general manual for the general user. One last look at the SX-64. This is my model. It's dressed for presentation here in this photo. This photo was taken about 4 years ago, just after I'd retrobrighted that spacebar, and you can see the process returned it to an almost white colour. But in the intervening time, between when that photo was taken and now, it has returned to a dull yellow colour, as you would have seen earlier on. But never mind, it just shows retrobright's not necessarily permanent. But the 64 itself, the SX-64, it's a lovely machine, and certainly one I'm glad to have in my classic computer collection. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look at the Commodore SX-64. For those of you that didn't know too much about the model, I hope that was informative. And for those of you that did, well, I hope that back a bit of nostalgia for you. So until next time, keep well, and we'll see you in the next video.